Yo, what's going on, boys? How you guys doing today? Welcome back to this new video. And in today's video, we're gonna have a build for the Grandmaster Nightfall. And like always, this build is designed for you to be able to go ahead in there, get your weapon, get your completion, no matter what your teammates might be running. You know, because you never know with LFG, you never know what you're gonna run into. But this build will basically guarantee that you always get that completion. Now this week's build is basically gonna be a melee build because of the certain modifiers we have on this strike. They make melee builds really good for this one, so I decided to keep it safe, and we're basically just gonna go with an old classic melee build with the new Arc Staff Hunter. Now the only thing that you're gonna need to make this build work is gonna be the good old Liar's Handshake. As long as you have this exotic, then you're pretty much gonna make it work. So let's not waste any time, let's get into it, and this time we're actually gonna be starting off with our subclass first. Today we're on the Arc Strider because we're playing just pure Arc Hunter. And we are also on the Arc Staff. The Arc Staff Super has gotten much better lately with just being able to use it a lot more often with the new changes. So we're still taking advantage of that, and it works pretty well against like champions and also pretty much everything that we run into in this GM. Now for your class ability, you're going to want to go with Gambler's Dodge. This is just so we can get our melee every time that we dodge next to an enemy. This is going to be a big part of the build since we are going to require melee quite a lot. Now for our melee, we are going to be on combination blows. It's like the main part of the build. It's the main thing that we're going to be doing. Meleeing, dodging is the, core gameplay loop that we're going to be basically following with this build. And combination blows just increase our damage every time that we get a melee kill. That one is stacked up to 3. And we also have our Liar's Handshake procced. We do a ridiculous amount of damage that even the champions or like mini bosses just get absolutely chunked with combination blows. Now for our grenade, we are going to be on the flashbang grenade, and this is going to be for a couple of reasons. First of all, it stuns unstoppables, so it can stun some of the champions that are in the strike, and it also kind of works as a way to get the combinations blows working faster and just easily, because you throw it into a group of targets, blind all of them, and then you just walk up to them and just melee them, building up combination blows just much faster, much safer. Because that's like the main downside of the combination blows. Those first couple of melee kills are a little tougher, and while the Liar's Handshake does help and make it easier, whenever everything's blinded, then it just doesn't get easier than that. And thanks to one of our fragments, this thing is also gonna jolt targets, so not only is it gonna stun the unstoppables, but also the overloads. Essentially just stunning every champion in the strike. You can just throw a flashbang at them and you can stun them. Now moving on to the aspects, the first one is flow state. This will make us amplify whenever we defeat some jolted targets, which is going to happen quite a lot. And whenever we're amplified, we're going to get some extra damage resistance whenever we dodge. And just adding a bit more to our survivability, since we're always going to be in the middle of like the fight. And we also get our class ability back faster. So if for some reason we just don't have our class ability, or we just don't get it back with our melee kill, we're going to be getting it back faster just by being amplified. And our second aspect is going to be Lethal Current. After we reset dodge, our next melee attack has increased launch range, so we can just hit things from farther away. We're going to jolt targets, and it also creates a damage aftershock. This actually ends up giving you a little bit of extra ad clear. Whenever you kill something, everything around it is going to take a little bit of extra damage, making getting follow-up melee kills even easier. And also, if you do a follow-up punch on something that's already jolted, then you're going to blind that target, making them easier to kill. Now moving on to the fragments, the first one we have is the Spark Resistance. This is going to give us a bit more survivability since we take less damage whenever we're surrounded, and since we're always going to be close to the enemies, this thing is always on. By the time that it turns off, usually is when everything's just dead, so this one is always just good to have because it adds to our survivability. After that, we're going to have the Spark of Amplitude. This is going to let us get some extra orbs of power whenever we get some multi-kills while amplified. And since we're going to be amplified a lot of the time, it just means that we just get a couple of extra orbs. The orbs are going to help us get our super back faster, our abilities, as well as keeping us alive. After that, we're going to have the Spark Shock, and this is just what lets our grenade jolt targets. So it just makes our grenade even better. And the final perk that we have on this build is going to be the Spark of Feedback. Whenever we take some melee damage, it increases our outgoing melee damage. So whenever an enemy hits us, they're essentially just increasing our damage, and we're going to hit them back even harder. Now for exotic, we are going to be on the Liar's Handshake. This is going to really skyrocket our melee damage. Whenever we use our arc melee ability, or we are hit by a melee attack, it allows to follow up with an extremely powerful melee counter punch that will heal us. So every 2 melees we're essentially going to be doing this extra high damage melee, or whenever we are hit by a melee attack. So yes, this is going to be able to stack with the Fragment as well, making just our counter melees just do some ridiculous damage and also heal us. So it also helps us with the survivability a bit, especially in this strike, since one of the modifiers makes it so we actually don't regen any health. But we already have like just so much built-in regen with our exotic, with the orbs, with our actual subclass, that we don't really feel that modifier at all. It feels like that modifier doesn't even exist. Now for the weapons that we're in on this build, for the exotic, I would actually recommend the Anarchy. We have it. The Anarchy works really well. It's basically something that we can set on an enemy and just kind of forget about. You set it, forget it, and then you just continue punching things. But if you don't have the Anarchy, then any arc, grenade launcher will work pretty well. You know, I just really like the ability to just put it somewhere and just kind of forget about it. Now for your energy slot, I would recommend a pulse rifle, and this is gonna be to give us an easy way to stun those unstoppable champions. I don't think I actually ended up using it that much to stun the unstoppable champions, just because I had a bunch of other things like the Anarchy, another grenade, and also some of the blinds that we have on the build. I actually didn't end up using the pulse rifle as much as I thought I was gonna use it, but it's still nice to have, and this pulse rifle is also just really good this season, so definitely give this a try. And for the kinetic slot, you're gonna want something with choke clip, so you can stun those overload champions, and also choke clip makes it a little bit easier to just approach like a group of enemies. Kind of similar to what we're doing with the blinding grenade, just making the enemies a little bit weakened before we show up and start just punching them, especially if they're far away, because you know they're just gonna be shooting at you when you're gonna get close to them. So shooting them with choke clip has like a similar effect. Maybe not as good as the blind, but it definitely weakens them and makes them a little bit easier to kill with your melee attack. And it's also going to be good against those overload champions, so you definitely want something with choke clip. Preferably the sidearm. The sidearm is just like the best choke clip weapon in the game right now, but some of the fusion rifles will also work. I tried it a couple of times with the fusion rifle and it worked fine. You just can't use it as often as you can the sidearm. Now moving on to the artifact, I'm sure you guys noticed, but there's a heavy concentration down here, and we're gonna get to those in a second. But you definitely want to have Anti-Barrier Scout, Kill Embrace, Total Carnage is pretty nice, especially since we are gonna finish some of those enemies whenever we see that they get low. So we can actually proc Total Carnage a lot more than you would expect. But from down here, you wanna definitely have Authorized Mods Melee, so your melee mods cost less. Emergency Flare is also good, since we are gonna be running emergency reinforcements. Because there's nothing really else to do with like our armor charge. We're not really gonna utilize it too much, so might as well slap on some emergency reinforcements and help our survivability even more. The thick of it is also really good, since we're always gonna be surrounded, so that just gives us another way of getting some free armor charge. You also have Trace Evidence. Whenever we kill some things that are jolted, that also creates some ionic traces, and that helps us get our abilities back faster. Curative Orbs will make it so we get some more orbs power, and then our compounding will increase the damage we do to things that are blinded. Now here we also have kinetic impacts. I had this since I had the Anarchy, and this works really well. Not only does it stun the champions, but it also does some damage to the enemies around them, so that worked pretty well. And also Concussive Reload, so we can put that weaken on some enemies. Now lastly, let's take a look at the mods that we're running on this build. And first of all, for the helmet, we have two hands-on mods, as well as Special Ammo Finder. We are going to be using our special weapon quite a lot, so that's what we have the Finder for, and this is just so we can get a bit of extra super energy. Now for the gauntlets, we have the triple heavy-handed to make a ton of orbs every time that we get a melee kill. Because that's mostly what we're doing, that's why we have 3 of them. It just completely removes the cooldown, so every melee kill that we get, we also make an orb. Now for our chest piece, we are going to have 2 void resistances, as well as an emergency reinforcements. This will give us a bit of extra damage resistance whenever our shields are broken, just making us a little bit tankier. It's not a lot, but it does help. And it's also void threat, so the void resistances will help with that. And if you can't afford it, then you could also get rid of one of these and go for instead for that concussive dampener, or maybe a sniper damage resistance, since at range is when you are at your weakest. For your boots, you want to go with Absolution or Restoration, Recuperation, just the classics. Nothing really special here. It is really just like some regular mods that we just run on pretty much any build. And lastly, for the class item, we're going to have Powerful Attraction, so we can pick up all the orbs when you use our class ability. And Bomber as was Distribution. This is going to give us some ability energy for everything as long as we are surrounded whenever we use our class ability, which is most of the time. And it even gives some super energy, so it even helps with that. And with that, that's actually going to be the end of the build. You guys pretty much have everything that you want. And with that, that's actually going to be the end of the build. Now you guys know everything out there is to know about this build, so you can go in there and have a good time with your melees. Like always, there's going to be a dim link in the description below and also at the top of the comments. So if you guys want to auto-equip this build, then just go over there and just dim link. And this build is pretty simple. You know, it's all about just meleeing things. This is like the perfect strike for melee builds. Most of the builds you will see this week in this strike are going to be melee builds. Whether it's combination blows, lightning surge, consecrations, that's pretty much what you're going to be seeing this week. Because of that modifier that just increases your health by a ton, but just disables health regen. But it doesn't really matter because every single character has like built-in health regen with their melee builds, where it's like that modifier doesn't exist. That's just a modifier that helps you and helps the melee builds be even better in this GM specifically. Now if you're trying to use this one on some other GMs, you are going to have to do some changes so you just don't die while you're trying to go towards the enemies. So I would suggest that you keep this build specifically to this strike. But anyways, with that, we're going to end today's video. Thank you for stopping by, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care everyone, have a good rest of your day, peace.